So today I am speaking about raising your vibrational frequency. Hopefully, I'll be able to deliver some value there. I originally was asked if I'd like to speak at any locations, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll speak. I'm not very much of a forward thinker, so I'm kind of impulsive, and on the spur of the moment I was like, sure, I'd love to get up in front of a whole bunch of strangers. And they said, what will you speak on? And I threw some out there topics that I could speak on, and when it came to actually speaking, I thought, what was I thinking? I wasn't really sure what I was thinking I was going to say about raising vibrational frequency, so I sat down in a quiet space and I hand wrote a speech, and I think I took it to the computer and I decided I was going to make some prompt cards using symbols. I then lost the speech, so I was left with just this PowerPoint slide full of symbols. So that's what I'm working with today. There's one that has a cartoon moo cow on it. I really can't remember what that was about, but we'll see what comes out as I go through. What do you think? Milk it, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so public speaking was actually a phobia that I had years ago. I remember being at the Camden Chamber of Commerce back in like 2011 or something, and I was unexpectedly called up onto the stage and they gave me the microphone, and I was just like standing there going, and I couldn't remember what my business did, which back then was bookkeeping. And I remember, like, I just ran off there and I ran straight into Debbie Roberts. Can you remember that? I think I remember this. I ran into Debbie Roberts and she was so warm and soft, and I always, every time I see you on Facebook, I remember that moment because I was just thinking, get me off this stage. So it was really quite a terrifying moment for me. Okay, so how do I operate this thing?
We don't have to. You just go like that.
Yes.
Okay.
See,
right,
told you.
Okay, so if you roll back about 30 years, all this new age stuff about frequency wasn't really talked about unless you were, a little bit alternate. But these days, with all the social media, we've got a whole stack of inspiring, uplifting kind of content. Everyone's into essential oils. There's companies competing for our essential oil markets, and everybody's about the speaking your truth and grounding and so forth. So nothing I say today is going to be new. It's more about self-awareness and what you are actually living and feeling and experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I think I covered this part. So more screen time has meant that we feel like we're actually getting dopamine increases. So every time we get on the screen and we get a like, we get a response, we get something, we're getting our dopamine pushed up. Now in the past, to get that dopamine, we used to have to connect with people in real life. We used to have to feed our children, cook meals, go for walks, get the laundry up to date. Gee, got that one nailed, feels good. Now we can get all of that on our screen, and the more we get, the more we need, and it can be quite disruptive. It can cause anxiety and depression and disconnection, and as a hypnotherapist I specialise in anxiety and depression, so this is all very relevant. Okay, so 1 in 5 people suffers anxiety and depression, which is quite high. Now in America during COVID that went up to 1 in 3, I think. So it's definitely increasing, and the average school student is affected. There's lots of kids, and when I was a teenager we used to drink, and that was like brag rights, like I was really drunk on Saturday night. Now it's like I'm on antidepressants and I've got a diagnosis, and that's kind of turning into like the trophy comment. So it's kind of changing. It's like people as young as 5 are taking medication for anxiety and depression. So what has all of this got to do with vibration? We're all energy, and our emotions are an energy frequency, and we don't control them by choice. So you don't wake up in the morning choose to feel worried today. It all happens on an unconscious level. So all our thoughts, all our emotions are all energy. We have energy from our food, so whether we're eating like low vibration food or high vibration food, I'll let you decide which foods are which. Our cells are like little battery energies making ATP, which that's the energy that we live on. And each of us has a magnetic field around us. We have an energy, and when we walk into the room, sometimes we can actually feel that energy from other people. Like if somebody really agitated walked in now, you'd probably be able to tell straight away. There's a thing called the Hawkins scale of consciousness. Now I found this really fascinating when I discovered this thing that somebody actually had made a scale of frequencies. And if we have a look at it, it's kind of like a cone with the alpha point down the bottom and the omega point at the top. And if you have a look down on the left side, you can see that everything below 200 is rated as contracted and forced. So you can be powerful, but you're forcing it, and you are operating from a contracted space. So you're going to be feeling pretty awful. So things like anxiety, regret, despondency, withdrawal, aggression, fear, grief, guilt, shame. Shame being the very bottom point of the cone. When you get to the top, you've got expansion, you've got enlightenment, you have power. And this is not the power over, this is the power of self. And this is something that we kind of all aspire to have, is a power of self. And they talk about self-worth, self-esteem, self-identity, and all those kinds. So looking at those lower end stuff, we're not going to have a good flow in our life if we are living in with a vibration that is down in contracted, down in craving, desire, fear, anxiety, regret, envy, hate, anger, inflation, demanding, that kind of thing. So it's good to become a little bit self-aware, because all we do is wake up in the morning and we don't have like enough antenna out there to reflect back of what is actually going on the inside on an emotional level. And our emotions are our primary frequency of how we move around the world. Okay. Who likes to feel that life is frightening, tragic, hopeless, evil, or miserable?
It's always hope.
Well, 1 in 5 people are vibing under 100. 1 in 5 people has anxiety or depression. That's under 100. Anxiety and depression, hopelessness, that is the real pandemic. And we don't have a vaccine for it. And it is increasing. Like I said, in America went to 1 in 10 during COVID. Okay, so let's have a look. If fear and anxiety is 100, and life doesn't begin to get bearable until 200, between 100 and 200, let's have a look at what the levels are. So one level up is desire. So we get to one level up from anxiety and we start wanting something more. And now this leads to that feeling of disappointment, because we're at least at the point where we're motivated to want something. So we're out of depression, now we're wanting. And I see clients with this all the time, like, I really want someone to love me, I really want a better job, I really wish I was happy. But the problem is that then you look around on social media, especially, and you see all the people that have what you want and then you feel dissatisfied. But it's still a step up. Next one, anger. That's where you get really, really pissed off because everyone else has all these things and you don't. And we can get quite aggressive, and you'll see people that get into the bullying, or that sort of, like, I call it the aggressor mode. It's where you're a victim, but you're an angry victim. So it's all about, like, blowing steam at other people, and it can be quite, it's a heavy, low vibration to be around other people, but at least it feels a little bit more powerful than being down in the depressed states. The next one up is pride. This is where people start to get that, it's like almost on the outside, it looks like you've got it all together, but there's a lot of fear of judgment. And people that when I'm speaking, fear of judgment is actually one of the biggest things that people do deal with. It's like, what will everybody else think? What will everybody else say? How will I be perceived? Who is going to not like me? Who's not going to be happy about what my decisions are? And that kind of thing. So we've gone from level 100, which is anxiety, depression, that kind of thing. We've gone up. We're now 3 levels up. The next one is courage. So life only starts to feel feasible when we get to this level. That's the first step of positivity. Now remember, we're not always in one level, but if you think about life, you kind of go through to be a range. Like, here's my low point, here's my high point, and that's where you kind of trend between good day, bad day. But if we can lift our whole level up, life starts to feel really positive. The next one's trust. This is where people get open. They put away the fear of judgment and fear of, being scorned and all that sort of stuff. And they've reached courage and they're willing to go through and do the work, to accept, to forgive, get understanding, reasoning, and all that's pretty simple to follow. When people usually come for programs that I run, they need to be, we do a pre-session, a free phone session, and people need to be at least able to get to this before they're going to get any results working with somebody. And sometimes I guess it can take time to get to this as well. Okay, so as I said, we don't choose our emotions. They are originated in the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is filled with all the programming since the day we were born, or probably before, and all of that is stored as energy in our body. So that's where health conditions start to come in. So we don't want to stay in whatever vibration. The point is, and I've heard a lot of you say that the thing you love is to see your clients have breakthroughs and transformations and get that positive feedback. The thing is that it's so much fun to clean other people's houses, but what we like to have is our own breakthroughs and our own growth. And that means actually doing an honest inventory. And I was curious, because I just quickly knocked this up this morning, I was curious to see if anyone would actually be willing to circle the words, because it's an admission that there's work to be done. Okay, this one. Now here is where it starts getting really interesting. There's something about being stuck, having options, feeling terrible, stop the shit.
The pill emoji is jumping right out.
and realise that I matter. That's the message on that slide. Because emotions don't just go away. So what happens is you have an emotion when you're just a little human before you have filters in place, and then what happens is that emotion has nowhere to go. It doesn't get resolved. It just gets stored. And the unconscious mind puts that away and says, oh, I don't know what to do with that now, but let's address that later. And so what happens in life is we go around in cycles. And so if somebody comes to me and they're 45 years old and they say, I feel constantly rejected, left out, I don't belong, I'm different, and those sort of things, you can guarantee that that came somewhere earlier, that this is not the first time. Nobody gets to like 30, 40 and suddenly has an emotion. They're always on repeat until we deal with them when we release them. Okay, so we've already agreed that emotions are an energy that we feel in our body. No one wants that bad juju in their life, and we don't want to feel ugly, messy, yucky, and we definitely don't bring that stuff out in public if we can possibly help it. We keep that tucked away for our loved ones where it's safe. Okay, so who loves to do their taxes?
Amy does.
Amy does.
Oh,
Amy does.
We have a few psychopaths in the room. What about pap smears? I've got the duck bill and the spatula there.
No, you just reminded me that I need to have that.
I can't wait for these self-testing kits to come in.
Oh.
Get you to see
Are they coming out?
I don't know about
Yeah,
it.
Okay.
Yeah, a few weeks back they had it on the radio.
Perhaps me then a boob thing, but I'm booked in for the boobs next month.
I
I know. Well, regardless of whether you like it, get your bits checked. Okay?
If one takeaway today is please get your bits checked.
Yeah.
So we've got another task, our internal bits. We need to clear our emotions. At least check in and see if there's anything there that needs to be cleared. And then increase our frequency so that we bring that into the world, into our families, into our businesses. Okay, because low vibes, negative emotions, waking up in the morning with dread, having whatever it is that's down in that contracted state, if you're walking around with that, that's your normal. You don't even know that other people are feeling different. And you will attract more of the same. Like I said, it's on repeat until it's resolved. So it's about the vibe and the tribe, it's about the law of attraction and manifesting and, you know, if you're not doing it right and the 22 principles of success and all the other things that are out there on social media, all that stuff rolled into just a simple sentence. Okay, emotions come back to be processed. That's the purpose of them coming back, is so that we do address them. So instead of, there's two aspects you can look at this. You can say from the victim point, it's like, why me? Why do I have to feel like this? Why that? Or the blaming, so that's the aggressor, like everybody else is doing this to me. Or there's the creator, and the creator says, this is my life, this is my time, and I'm going to live it on my terms. That means that when something isn't right, I'm going to deal with it. If it doesn't feel good, I'm going to find out why, be the detective and bring power back into my position. The other reason that we continue to get these things coming back up is because life will vibe back to you. It's just a mirror. So if you've got conflict in your life, if you've got rejection, if you've got loneliness, it's just mirroring back what's in here and in here. So they're connected. So cleaning up our frequency, we'll be able to find joy and happiness, get into the flow and have better relationships. So there's a lot of reasons why doing this work is good. So, sharing the key about how to increase our vibrations. We need to discharge them. They need to be felt. So you know that thing where you kind of want to move away from negative. I don't want to feel that. No, I don't want to feel that. The fridge will help. The iPad will help. You know, whatever it is. The gym might help. So it's about actually taking the time, and it's like, you know, I have all these things I love to do, like Rebecca, I could read 20 books in a week, but I don't have time to do it. It's about making time to process some of this stuff. Discharging emotion from events, people, and situations, because they're the things that have taken our power away and left us feeling helpless. And then once we release those emotions, we can stop that cycle so that it doesn't come back. So that includes removing hooks to other people. So if you've got grudges, if you've got you know, people that you avoid at MacArthur Square or Newellyn Town Centre, if you've got, you know, people that you want to throw darts at, or you know, that kind of thing. Attachment, people mistake attachment for love, but attachment isn't love. It's just attachment, and that's where you feel like you're in love with something or someone, but there's this huge fear associated with it, that you would lose it. So that's another type of book. And yeah, as I said, grudges. The key is gratitude, love, and forgiveness. Now, you've all heard of gratitude journals, and like I said, all this stuff is not new to anyone. It's all out there. It's about just reminding ourselves to take the time to go in and process our emotions. Gratitude, love, forgiveness. business, there's a process called Ho'oponopono, or something that I can never say, where you do energy towards another person. Thank you, I love you, please forgive me, I'm sorry. But first of all, just acknowledging that I have this thing that comes back in my life that's there. I have this feeling and I want to release it, going into it. If you actually tune into your emotions, you might notice that they're actually located in your body somewhere, in a place. You can tune into that feeling, you can rate it out of 10, you can check what colour it is, you can check if it's moving or still. And using your imagination, you can actually shrink it, shift it, remove it, notice what changes, you can talk to it, you can do a whole stack of stuff. The thing with the imagination is it's the language of the unconscious mind. So every time you imagine something, your unconscious doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an imagined experience. So just for example, if you went into an emotion and you sat it on a chair and you talked to it and you took it out for lunch or whatever you want to imagine, it might be a person that you have a grudge against and maybe you want to sit them on a chair and give them a few servings. But whatever it is, it needs to get out of you and to be released. So back to our cone. The bottom half is powerless and the top half is powerful. Now, feeling powerless is the key to trauma. So when we have something unpleasant happen, it's not only the event that's traumatic, it's the fact that we had no power in that situation. So anything powerless, anytime we allow ourselves to be powerless or stay in a position where we have no power, we're actually unsafe. And unsafe means worry, and worry means anxiety. When we are in those higher frequencies, we're powerful. And that's a whole different feeling. Imagine showing up in your business as a powerful woman, being able to deliver to your clients powerfully and showing up for them and being able to help them get their power as well. Feeling safe, trusting, being willing, again, to do the work. And just wanted to put this slide back in again because I think that it's good to be really clear on how this works. So 200 is the midpoint. Below that, pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt and shame are all powerless. Once we get to neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, enlightenment, we're up in our personal power. And being powerless leads to being feeling like either a victim or an aggressor. There's conflict, there's, what's that thing where people pleasing. People pleasing. So if you're not in conflict as an aggressor, then you're people pleasing. So you're actually hurting yourself to please others. And the word is like they, it's about other people. Whereas when you pull it back to me, and you start realising that you are the creator in your life and giving yourself permission to have power, and depending on how you grew up, power might be something scary because there might have been people in your world that had power that didn't use it for good things, but this is the personal power of self. So it doesn't matter how much peace, love and joy that you have, if you are also weighed down by grief, guilt and fear and anger. So it's like you're not going to get off the ground. It doesn't matter how big those helium balloons are, full of all those good things. What we want to do is release all that negative stuff down the bottom so that you can take off in a rocket. Yep. Okay. We've reached the big house. I don't know what I was doing here, but it's something about.
It's very zen.
I'll just let you. I see some baggage. I see some peace and some baggage. We release the baggage.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a sacred cow. Maybe.
Maybe there's a poo. Maybe there's a
That's his title.
maybe it's meant to be bull poo, and I forgot on the other part. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's
Just let him go.
There's a lot of emotions going on because it's all these different colours.
yeah. Okay, so programs and processes. So I have done a lot of training, like 10 years of just, I spend minimum 15,000 a year on courses, so it's a lot of training. And what I've found is that you can know it all, but you cannot do it on yourself. You can't, if you want to get rid of that heavy stuff, you can't do it alone. You need support, and working with somebody who's trained as a professional you're just going to get results. And I know we have a lot of women who coach, work in business and in personal. Get together with someone, work through the stuff. It's worth every cent you'll spend on it. You'll feel so much better. Investing in working on yourself will give you peace, get rid of the emotional baggage, and find happiness. Okay, so how does this relate to business? People buy from people that they know, like, and trust. So you can like someone all you like, but if you don't trust their skill set or their way they operate, or it's a trilogy. You need to know them, like them, and trust them. Now, what happens when people come to you and they complain? What happens when people come to you and they're in constant conflict with someone else? What happens when people come to you and they're people pleasing and just accommodating everyone else and not putting themselves first? You get a sense of what level of power, whether it's conscious or unconscious. You are picking up on where's this person at on an energy level, and do I want to work with them? Okay, so the more of this stuff we have, the less people will gravitate and have the professional confidence. So if you can imagine that somebody, even just something simple like you walk into a clothing shop, if somebody is standing at the counter with apathy or grief or hopelessness or if they're smiling at you or whatever, it's kind of like a different feeling to if somebody's really present in the moment and feeling great. Okay, low vibrations show up in business as complaining about customers. Oh, if it wasn't for those customers, life would be great. Suppliers, staff, how stupid they are. Competitors, like why did that stupid woman open a shop right next to mine when I should have had my table here first? And you hear people that complain in business. It's lowering. Conflicts and disputes, whether it can be even with landlords, strata companies, things like that. It's not a good vibration. High staff turnover. So if you've got staff and you are finding that people are coming and going, it's potentially a dispute. Fear is massive. Competition, imposter syndrome, about sharing information, about being taken advantage of, or wanting to charge too much, like I hear all the time, I know my worth, or charging not enough, where it's like, I'm too worried to charge. I remember, I used to have the other one, not charging enough one. And scarcity mindset, where you're too afraid to invest in anything, always looking for the cheapest thing. So I remember I had a bookkeeping practice, so I had clients, as I said before, and I'd be talking to all of them. And the ones that did really well, like their businesses were big, they were thriving, everything was going easily, you could feel a different vibration from those clients. And I mean, I had clients, say for example, a plumber. Now plumbers should make $1 million a year because we've all had to call a plumber, we know what they charge. And I had this guy that, I felt like I should be charging him an hourly rate to listen because it was just bad times. He was on the bad times cycle. And his business was not profitable. It was very, very tight, very lean, and it reflected exactly where his vibration was. So step by step, release, discharge, go into it, stop avoiding it, look at it, do an inventory. Are you carrying baggage? You wouldn't know unless you checked. Unhook from people, circumstances and events, and gain back your personal power. Even if you've never had it before, it belongs to you. So it's your time to claim it. And if you do have staff, if you do have clients, help other people to increase their vibration. Use reward systems, use little cards. In my bathroom, I've got a little card this big from Andrea, something, just a little note, and it's sitting there, and just that little hint of something, that it's not a hint, it's a little gesture, is very, very uplifting, and that's just an example of her vibration that she's able to give that out. I think that's it. I think. Yay!
Before you
So
said,
good.
does anyone have any questions they might want to ask me?
What was the name of that table again?
Hawkins Scale Consciousness.
So those of you who know Barbara Callan, she's one of our members, and often a saying that I learned from her is like the focus is to operate from love or above. Have you ever heard her say that? She's referring to the Hawkins scale, so because that's where love and above is the highest frequency.
Yeah.
And just having that focus is cool. Going into situations like, okay, I'm going to go into a situation. I'm going to aim to stay at love or above.
Yeah.
And so that's something I try and do all the time. But yeah.
Look, everybody goes down into the.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that we're all capable of everything.
Yes.
If something happens, the point is to be able to be aware of it
Yes.
and not get stuck there and
Yes.
not operate from there, so that you can get back up again.
Yes.
Instead of making that your new normal or whatever.
I just want to acknowledge you because this was a really great presentation, and all of it we have all heard before. But what I loved is how you presented that and made that. You gave us those examples of how it shows up in business. So awesome. I tell you. Yeah.
Sorry.
So my question, so how do you raise your vibrations? You mentioned courses. What courses do you have?
Courses. Okay, so I run programs for anxiety and depression specifically, which run over 6 weeks. They're online. There's weekly sessions, weekly lives, big 2-hour breakthrough session, and that resets the nervous system. So basically what happens is when we have trauma from our childhood or trauma from adulthood or wherever it's from, what happens is there's a loop that happens, and if it doesn't close, so when your unconscious mind triggers the release of adrenaline and cortisol, the hippocampus doesn't put things into long-term memory, so it stays on our desktop. So it's actually like an open, that's when you see people, I call them tripwires in relationships, they're actually triggers. So people get triggered, and that brings it all back up again. And if you're walking around with triggers, then life starts to get hard and anxiety levels go up. And what we need to do is to let the unconscious know and the body that that is over, that we're safe, get back into a position of power over those events, and that then re-regulates the nervous system. So if anyone knows anyone with anxiety, depression, PTSD, blah, 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 that's a program that I run. Alternatively, you can do sessions one-on-one with either myself or anyone else that does like emotional healing or that kind of thing. It's basically about, my view is I've tried doing stuff on myself. You can do a little bit, you can get self-awareness, but you can't actually do like clearing work where you're getting into the deep stuff and really releasing stuff. Journaling is probably the closest you can do. There's a guy called Jordan Peterson who's all over TikTok and whatever, he's a psychologist. He has a program about, it's called self-authoring, and it's proven that people that can like get onto paper the stuff about their life have a better emotional and mental health level. So yeah, it's about doing the work,
There's two
whether it's with
things.
me or with someone else.
Susan, there's two things there. It's like, I think for all of us, everyone, we all have bad stuff. But there's little things we can do in a moment or in a day to raise our vibration.
Yes.
And then there's the awareness of like, if this keeps showing up for me, there's
Yes.
something here that I need to explore and clear. But little things to raise your vibration is, you know, reach out to someone who you feel good around, or, you know, all of those, you know, I think it would be great if we all had a little suite of things that we had either listed or somewhere in the back of our minds that we can do that will lift us up and nourish us in a good way. Not necessarily chocolate, but you know what I mean.
I eat my body weight in
I
chocolate.
probably should tell
Yeah.
you how I changed my life. So I was extremely poor. I had 2 children before I was 20 to a drug addict, and I began to chant. And what I was chanting about was money, and within 5 years I had achieved the amount that I'd set, which was back in the 90s, which was $250,000. And that then made me realise this stuff actually works. However, the whole rest of my life was a complete mess and fell apart. So, going through relationship breakdowns and all that sort of stuff. So I realised that you need to do it for everything. And so that book there is actually describes how to do it. So it's basically about looking at what you want and then creating an emotional experience, so a tangible experience. What can you see, what can you hear, what can you feel, what can you smell, in what you'd like to have. So for example, if you're in business and you'd like to have to be busy and thriving and have clients everywhere, then you would write, like, I see, people smiling, talking about my products or my services. I feel so proud of what I've accomplished. I look at the bank, there's money. That's one thing if you're looking at transforming, because the unconscious doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. If you give it an experience, that becomes familiar and it will repeat more of that. It's just like, oh, this is who we are and what we do now, so we'll bring that to you. So that's kind of like that law of attraction kind of stuff, but it's in a process which you can actually do, and you record it and then you listen to it and chant it. And as you do, what was interesting is that I recently discovered that if you're having an experience, it's releasing dopamine. So that dopamine release is the same as what I was talking about, which is the driver of addiction, which can get, that experience raises your frequency. So if I wake up in the morning and instead of thinking, oh God, I'm like, I'm a powerful woman with a beautiful business, I've got gorgeous people around me, I live in a wonderful street, and just to explain that a little bit more, my partner now, we've been together for over 10 years now, but we lived in this tiny little 80 square metre house, and I started chanting for, number one, a child, a son, which I've now got, I had him at 45, but I also started chanting for a beautiful big architecturally designed home in a wonderful suburb, close to restaurants, parks, shops, the motorway, less than 45 minutes from my mum's house, blah, 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 and we now live in that house. So it takes a bit of effort and a bit of time, and it's probably a little bit abstract from the emotional stuff, but it makes you feel good when you actually speak good things into your life. So it does actually raise your vibration, because you're putting, what are you seeing, what are you hearing, what are you feeling? And if you're chanting, I feel amazing. I feel so energized, awake and alert, so confident, able to stand in front of these people and speak. That's a whole different feeling to when I stood up at the Chamber of Commerce and went, ah, and panicked and ran into Debbie. So, yeah, you can change.
And give hugs later.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.